Thank you everyone for being here. Today we're speaking to Katelyn Redwood. She's a certified hypnotherapist in the Los Angeles area, and she sees clients all around the world. So we're going to dig in and find out what is the path that brought her here and where she's going with hypnotherapy. Katelyn, thank you for being here. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about the path that brought you to hypnotherapy.
You bet. And thank you for having me, Eddie. So the path to getting to becoming a hypnotherapist was a very unexpected one. This was not something I ever saw myself doing. I spent my entire life working as a musician, training as a musician. I invested a lot of time and money into that career and went to college and got my degree in music and moved out to LA to do music. When I first moved to LA, I do remember driving. And as I was driving north, leaving the city, passing by that freeway sign that says HMI, College of Hypnotherapy. And all I remember thinking at the time was, that's so interesting that they have a college for that. And I guess it legitimized it a little bit in my mind because I'd never given any thought to that entire world. So, but then I forgot about that and never thought about it again until several years back. My sister's kid was visiting me. They were 13 or 14 at the time. And at that point, I had been doing a lot of searching myself. I knew that I wanted to feel a little bit more secure professionally, which is hard to do as an artist in a big city with a high cost of living. And, I was really kind of stuck, wondering what the answer to that question was going to be and trying to be open and okay with not knowing for a while. But I'd really been asking myself for several months what might be the next thing for me. And my sister's kid, just out of the blue, knowing nothing about what I had been, doing the searching for on my own, just asked, if you had to be doing something else, what would it be? And I don't know where the answer came from, but the very first thing that came to my mind was maybe in another life I would be a hypnotherapist. And that was surprising. It was surprising to me because I'd never thought about it. I didn't even know very much about it. And I remembered seeing that sign on the freeway. And so I Googled HMI and first of all found out that it's really one of the most comprehensive training programs for becoming a certified hypnotherapist. And second, I saw that the program was moved online, which immediately made it more accessible to me. And then I started checking out the free content that they had. The more I learned, the more interesting and excited I became about the idea. And then when it came to time to, enroll and check it out, they let you know you have 6 weeks. And I thought, okay, I've got 6 weeks to really figure out if I'm interested or if this is just a strange thing my subconscious is trying to generate to make me feel like I have an answer so I can, sleep at night. But the truth is, as soon as classes started, I was completely taken in. We start out with learning the foundations of hypnosis, and I just found it so informative and academic in a way I wasn't expecting. I think there's a little bit of this like woo-woo association still with hypnotherapy, and what I was so excited to see and experience was the legitimacy of the use of it as a therapeutic practice. So really, every step since I first said that maybe I would in another life be a hypnotherapist, from then until now, I've only become more enthusiastic about the work and excited to be doing it. So seems like my subconscious knew something that I did not.
That's a wonderful story. I like how the message that brought on the aha moment came from a child. And there's this kind of idea that sometimes fate, God, it speaks through children, and just kind of, if you're open enough to accept the message, it just comes through. And did it feel that way for you, that it was some kind of like message from fate calling?
It did feel like an important moment when it happened, because again, I had been looking for the answer to that question for so long and could not for the life of me generate an answer that made me excited. And yet with my nibbling, asking the same question, there was magic in it. And maybe it was because it was someone outside of myself. I also, you know, I love all my siblings' children. This particular nibbling, I've always had a very close connection with. Um, so I do feel like absolutely you're right in that they brought this piece of their own magic that drew this piece out of me. And they do like to take a little credit for me doing this. And I'm like, it's take the credit. It is, I do credit you for being there and asking the question in a way that I could actually hear.
Now, when you saw that sign of the hypnotherapy college, did you have any images that, like, you mentioned the woo? Did you imagine different scenarios happening, and how do those images, if they happen, compare to what it actually was?
When I saw the sign, it was the opposite effect. I was, I honestly I never really gave much thought to hypnosis or hypnotherapy. I just didn't. My mom had one experience when I was younger, and I thought it was interesting that she had an experience with hypnosis that seemed to be really, really gave her an experience. But when I saw this sign, I just had never considered it something that you can really study. I always imagined it being one of those things that, either you're a psychologist or someone on a weekend, a certification clinic, and there was nothing like in between. I just thought that, it was either very, very established, educated people with a lot of credentials, or it was, someone with bare feet in a long dress and, um, and like not very much in touch with the academic side. And those are my own, those are my own prejudices. This has nothing to do with anything. It's just what my mind had constructed around what hypnotherapy might be. But when I saw the sign, what I thought was interesting was it placed it in as a new possibility of that's a serious job. You can seriously study it, and there is something serious to study about it. And so seeing the sign was really what piqued my interest, and I think that HMI definitely lived up to that sweeping first assessment of seeing the sign. It absolutely was, um, it just felt very grounded, and that was really important to me. I I wanted to feel like this was based in clinical research and a degree of science, and actual like foundations and principles that weren't, you know, that were attached to something real. I mean, I do have a spiritual side, and my husband works in that world. And I admire that. I follow authors and spiritual teachers as well. I think it's all a wonderful part of the bag. But for me personally, I felt the need to have something that felt very grounded um, in theory and academics and data.
Now, I want to get into your spiritual beliefs and the spiritual beliefs of and work of your husband, but I want to ask. You mentioned your mom. She had, an experience with hypnotherapy. What was your experience with hypnotherapy? Like, did you go under hypnotherapy while you were in class, and what does it feel like to you?
Good question. So in school, I think I had a harder time. I mean, I understand that being in hypnosis is a natural state of mind, and I can recognize how you know, access that state of mind all the time now. When it came to actually being in class and in school, um, I didn't feel it regularly. I felt like we were all getting good practice at different pieces. Um, but there was one practicum workshop where another student gave me an experience. And I think I think that they were natural. I think that was part of it, that they brought in this natural ability to lead you somewhere inside of yourself. And I think it was also that I was showing up that day, with something that I could, think about while working in practice. Obviously, as you know, Eddie, like in practicum, our practice issues are not issues. We keep it very general, so we're not doing therapy on each other. But that was really cool, being able to actually experience it experienced hypnosis from a classmate. And then obviously I worked with my mentor as well, and was able to go into hypnosis with her. And, it's relaxing. It's exactly what my clients tell me. They come out, they feel physically relaxed and just overall positive. And that's a great thing on its own.
What did you feel and see in your actual experience, though?
Well, when we were in class, um, I was processing on my own, happening in my own life, that this big piece of land that I grew up on, my dad's house is on it, my grandmother's house is on it, my great grandmother's house is on it, and the rest of it is woods and a pond. And my grandparents died, and I was accepting the fact that the land had been sold, and the forest was going to be gone, and they were going to build 80 houses on this property that I loved so much. And so I kind of went in with a little bit of a heartache on that. And the other student had asked me to, picture, if they wanted me to go to my special place, picturing my favorite place, and my favorite place is that place. And the experience really made me appreciate that the feeling from that place and all of those memories there, is preserved and protected forever. Like, that never leaves me. And it allowed me to just kind of really lean in more toward the gratitude that we had that experience, and how rare and amazing is that to have a whole family in like one place and beautiful setting. And I have moved into that space, and I was there a couple months ago watching my grandmother's house get torn down and watching the trees get torn down, and there was a piece of sadness in it, but I was really able to come back to that feeling that I had in the session with the student, or the practicum with the student. Is just that, that imprint, that feeling, the real value of what that experience gave me. It it's there forever. It's a part of me, and I can access that. It's deeply ingrained into my own subconscious, and I can go there regardless of what's happening in the real world with that land.
So that's really interesting. It's like humans have a kind of a fear of loss when things go in the material. They want to know that things still exist outside of the material and within them. And I noticed you were touching here, and you mentioned the subconscious. Do you think that the subconscious kind of exists not only in the brain and the mind, but elsewhere in the body?
Absolutely. And this is not something I bring into my work unless a client takes me there themselves. But I do feel that accessing that subconscious is very much in alignment, parallel, or maybe the same as accessing our higher conscious, and this larger force out there that when we're in alignment with, we thrive, and when we are in our own fear and pain, we don't thrive. And so I do think that the subconscious is not just in the mind, it's in the body, it's in our hearts, and it's outside of us as well.
And is this something you carry into your work with clients?
I do. Like I said, I don't bring people into any of that depth unless they show me or say that they want to go there. I really believe that any presenting issue can be a gateway to all the way to spiritual enlightenment. But it's not my job to, you know, to encourage people to go there. If you want to go there, that needs to come from within, and not someone else being like, you could take this all the way to, and, people are gonna think you're, lose rapport, really, because if it's not within that person's reality already, or they don't understand, they don't get it, like, you're gonna lose people. But I do have clients that come in and they work on something that just seems like, okay, this is just gonna be like, we're going to do some sessions, we're going to see some improvement, maybe we'll do a follow-up, and you'll be on your way. And what ends up happening is the Pandora's box opens, and it becomes not just about, a fear or a phobia, but rather an entire way of being in their life, and um, and how as we begin to unravel that, they themselves begin to search for meaning outside of their own experiences and misconceptions about the world, or their own fears, like not like fear we were working on, but their insecurities about themselves. And when people start to look beyond themselves for strength and begin to define whatever that is in their own words, um, that's actually very exciting to me, because I will absolutely go there with you, and it's an honor too.
You mentioned how, people are going within and, having these profound experiences, even when they come for something like smoking or, nail biting or something like that. What do you think is at the root? Because there's this whole like, mental epidemic going on with mental health. Do you think there's something at the root, or are there many roots that are causing this?
Let me think about that for a second. I guess I can only speak from my experience with my clients and myself and other people in my lives who talk about it. Um, one thing I think that's fairly common is we pretty early on in life get wrapped up in some sort of defense mechanism, whether it's the way that we think about ourselves, a behavior. We learn usually at some point in our childhood a way that keeps us feeling safe. But then over time, that isn't working for us anymore. And safety is a big one, and when you have something, even if it's maybe not the best outlet, or even with religion, some people grow up in very strict religious households. They prescribe to a certain religion, a certain doctrine. And then as they get older, they realize like this doesn't fit me. But without it, it's very scary. And so I think that um, when we're able to reconcile that feeling with what actually does feel true in our heart, and we can live and act and believe and see ourselves in the world from that place that's the most true. I do think that that's the starting point for healing on really any of the clients that have come in for me. Being able to access that point is just a surefire direct route to beginning to understand how to address their own pain and their own challenges and mental illness. Now, I don't work with a lot of people with diagnosable, mental illnesses. It's beyond my scope unless I have a referral. Um, but I think it's easy for us as therapists, and easy for a lot of people who are just empathetic in the world, that you're able to recognize the pain of others and that their suffering at the root of it is fear. And at least when it comes to going all the way to this spiritual side, you really are finding something bigger than yourself, that it's not going to give you all the answers, but it does give you the sense of it's okay not to have them, and that you're taken care of. You're not forgotten.
So it's almost like an existential fear of kind of life and this unknown thing. And so they hold on to this kind of a defense. And what does hypnotherapy do with that? Like, does it take that defense and change it, or what gets replaced? What happens instead of fear?
Well, and again, fear is not a word I would use with a client unless they use it first. Um, but the idea, I think, with hypnosis, and again, someone comes in with a presenting issue, and the presenting issue is fear of flying. We're gonna start with the protocol for fear of flying, right? Um, and then as someone begins to unpack themselves, um, I'm able to, you know, when I join their same pace and figure out where they want to go, it's kind of like I have this visual for myself that I see when I work, and I should draw it. I've never shared it, so it'll be the first. But what I kind of imagine is that I see a canvas, and the canvas represents all knowledge, like all of the deepest spiritual understanding, just how, and even like just actual, like regular everyday knowledge, physics, mathematics, but it's all, this plane represents all of it. And if you pick a specific issue, and maybe it's the development of that spiritual side, or like expanding your understanding of what consciousness is, whatever it is, I imagine that I'm over here and I can see this part of the picture. I've uncovered over here by me. I'm able to see that. And this person is over here, and they can really just see this one tiny little spot, but they do see it. I can't try to get them over to where I am. I need to go over there and chisel out millimeter by millimeter so that they can experience more of what they already know. And so that's what I think we are able to do with hypnosis, is to really find that point where we can expand from. Um, I can't dictate what direction they go in and what unfolds, but I can um, be there to facilitate them finding that within themselves. But that's very much dependent on me figuring out, well, what do they see? What do they know? What do they feel in their body already? And then we can, with hypnosis, begin to expand that feeling and start to notice evidence of it in their everyday life. And then we have even more to work with when they come back and they're able to have experienced even more of it. And it's very exciting to watch it happen.
I love that imagery you painted of the two places. And what I saw in my mind was kind of a dark, just canvas with darkness.
Yes, that's what I
And
see too.
yeah, and you were here and you had like a lamp. The
Little
other
light.
person,
Hmm.
yeah, and they
Yep.
had a little one, but you went over to them and brought
Yeah.
them the bigger light and kind of illuminated
Hmm.
the area around them so they can kind of navigate this path.
Hmm.
And it is a path into the unknown. And it's
Definitely.
what you're illuminating there. And it's kind of like the faith in the light that will guide them through the
Yeah.
on there. It's
And their own light too, just that they have a light that they're holding, and they point it in the direction of that feeling, they will discover more.
so it's the thing that heals is going into the fear with light.
Yes, I think that fear is pretty common in a lot of the work that we do. And I actually am, it's funny that you mentioned that fear. Um, I am reading right now a book called The Tools by Phil Stutz, and there's a co-writer, and I don't have his name on the top of my head, but the first thing they talk about, pain is an inevitable part of life, but when you embrace it and you go straight into it, on the other side is freedom. And so I think fear is really the same way, in that, we tend to have an avoidance to things that scare us, but really when we confront it and we go straight into it, we are able to find this sense of freedom on the other side.
That's kind of so opposite to the kind of nature and what we think. We see fear, we move away from it, and we try to block it out with a kind of happiness. But it's actually the opposite that will get us happiness. So the other side of fear is happiness.
It's very counterintuitive,
Yeah.
and I'm guilty of it too, but I do
So
try to notice, work through it.
so you mentioned being a musician, and do you feel that you bring that kind of art, that kind of music into your work?
Um, Somewhat. So I don't, first of all, I don't use any music in my actual hypnotherapy work. And that's just a personal choice. Some people do it. I choose not to. Um, but when I was a musician, I am a musician, but I am also a songwriter. And um, I think one of the reasons I really had a hard time as a musician and a professional songwriter is that my songs sometimes, I don't know if they're sad. I don't know. There is a quality to them that is not mainstream. And after shows, I would usually get people who are very emotional because there was some sort of feeling that was expressed in that song, and that was profound for them. And that honestly was what was the most rewarding thing for me, because those songs came from my heart, from my experiences, and I felt deeply and needed to express it through music because that was my outlet. And how I think that ties in with hypnosis is, people come in and they really want to feel like you understand what the challenge is, you understand where their heart is, and we can use words while they're in hypnosis to find a very precise yet simple way to articulate not only what the feeling is, but what the result, the feeling beyond this feeling. We work through what that can be, and bringing people into this space where they feel seen and heard and hopeful. And I think that that is where the parallel with my career in music is just being able to hear a universal experience and emotion and help paint a picture for somebody that allows them to see it in a different way and experience it in a different way, and then see what can be beyond it. And I think honestly, just hearing your own experience repeated back to you can be really healing.
So in a way, you're continuing the same kind of work, but through a different method.
Absolutely. Yep.
And people, the musicians, they mention how they feel on stage. How do you feel when you're doing a session for someone? Like, where are you with your emotions? Where does your mind go? We have the image of the two circles in the dark. How do you feel? Where's your heart? Where do you feel that it's like your conscious mind doing the session, or is it something else?
So it's different with different clients. You get someone in the room who doesn't give you very much, and you having to really work to pull enough out of them so that you can then give them something that is meaningful to them when you then bring them into hypnosis. And then there are certain people that walk in the room and you just know, you're like, we have a connection. There is something about this person I already understand, and vice versa. And for those clients, it does feel like hypnosis is not something I'm doing to you. It is a place that you and I are going together. And I don't always know what's going to happen. I'm going to take my notes and I kind of know the areas that we're going to hit. But once we're in there, I do think that there is a little bit of a spontaneity, and that um you just follow that intuition. And only if you really do feel that connection with the client, and I don't go off of I don't stray very far from their own language. But there are times when in the moment you do feel like whatever the connection is between you is going to provide a little bit more ammunition for when they're actually in hypnosis. But then there are other clients again that don't give you a whole lot, and for those clients I'm really just kind of doing my best with what I have, and I don't so much tap into that other space of that you and I are dancing together in this other realm. It's more like, okay, I can understand how you are experiencing this, and I'm going to kind of go by the book and, you know that even when I just do that, it's going to have a positive
So it's like they bring you the lyrics and you are writing a custom song for them in a way.
Definitely. Yes, they do bring me the lyrics. And they don't even know a lot of times. They're talking and they're kind of venting, and I'm scribbling. And then at the end of the session, if it's really positive for them, like, oh, that was so great. And I'm like, that was you. All of that was you. I mean, I was here, letting you know what you already know. You already know this, and you provided all of the answers that you need. But, sometimes we need someone to put us in a hyper suggestible state and say our own language back to us.
So there's this idea that with many healers that while they heal, they are also healing themselves. And you mentioned that you were a musician and you were kind of in a place where you were a little lost and you were on your own path of healing. Do you feel that the path of healing kind of ended there, or does it still continue on now with clients?
I think because life is life and events happen and things play out, we are in constant need of healing and growth. And I don't think we ever stop. And I think that that's a good thing. I think it's the nature of our existence is that we will, have hurt and we heal ideally and we grow. And when we're not in that cycle, that's that's not a good place to be. I would much rather be in the cycle of healing and, pain and healing and growth and sort of being reinvented by life experiences and that just makes you go deeper. I don't think we ever really I don't think we stray too far from who we really feel that we are inside, but as life happens, we kind of refine it if we're leaning into doing that healing and that growth. I don't know if I
So,
answered your question.
yes, yes. So what is it about hypnotherapy in specific? Because there are different healing modalities. Like you could have gone into therapy or counseling or like psychology. What specifically in hypnotherapy do you think is the thing that makes it so effective?
Well, so my sister is a licensed marriage family therapist, and I did watch her go through that whole program. And I'm not gonna lie, it did not look like very much fun. The idea to me of being a therapist, maybe when I was younger, I was like, oh, that could be cool. But actually watching someone go through the program, it put me off of it a little bit. And obviously just the amount of time that it takes and being that I wanted to start working, as soon as possible. Um, but what I really beyond that, I would choose hypnotherapy over and over again because not only are we able to be the listener um, and be a sounding board, provide some tools, educate our clients, but it's that piece of putting them in a hyper suggestible state and then saying what they need to hear. That doesn't happen, and that is the piece that I think is what makes obviously it's what makes hypnotherapy, but I think that that's a big reason why people enjoy it. And I have clients that see therapists and they see me as well, and um and the feedback is they just enjoy the hypnosis because it feels active. It doesn't just feel like a venting session. It feels like, okay, we vent and then we do a little bit of work, but the work feels good too. And so I like that too. I have a little bit more liberty than a psychotherapist.
What are your favorite types of you know, things to work with? Like what do you like? What makes you go, yes?
Well, presenting issue wise, I'll just to be frank, I'm only about 15 months into my practice. So there's so many things I haven't been able to touch yet. But what makes me excited is when I can tell that someone is opening up to going beyond what they came in the door for. I have one client that came in for a fear, and as we continue to work together, their life begins to transform in these other areas, and they're expressing to me the way that they're seeing the world is changing and evolving. And that to me is like, oh, this is really exciting. Like, how wonderful. So anyone that kind of comes in with any sort of, or even if they don't come in and it develops over time and they start to notice like, oh wow, like I really am the master of my experience. Um, and people who have never thought that way, beginning to understand that's what makes me very excited.
Where do your spiritual beliefs kind of fuse in with your work? Like in your method, not that you're bringing, any kind of spiritual beliefs to clients, but do they fuse for you in the work?
Um, for me personally, they do, even if the client in the room doesn't know it. Um, I did not grow up with a strong, you know, background in religion. We weren't a family that went to church. But I did believe that there was something, and we were just kind of like special occasion Catholics. We went to church on Easter and Christmas Eve and whatever. Um, and but I, felt pretty alienated by the box of religion pretty young, and honestly, I just didn't think about it for years. Didn't, I used to pray when I was little, and I stopped praying. I stopped thinking about spirituality because I just thought it was synonymous with religion. And it was, I was going, I think when I was turning, 27, 26, 27, I started to understand it in a different way, and realizing that um, that being a spiritual person and developing that sense of spirituality isn't about conforming to someone else's definition of it, and that it is something that's personal and to be explored on your own, and that it's an exciting thing and you don't have to know the answers. Um, and in my life, since kind of reawakening to this more spiritual aware side of myself, um, I can't think of a time that I've leaned into it or asked a question or said a prayer or whatever, and it hasn't been answered or taken care of, or I haven't felt held or carried through something really difficult. Um, when it comes to being with a client in the room, um, that that quality that I feel with spirituality is this sort of um, really unconditional love, and that everyone's story deserves to be heard with a compassionate ear at least once, no matter how horrible you think you are or the story makes you, whatever it is. Um, and so I do try to bring this quality of like, you're safe and I love you. Obviously, I don't say that when we first meet, but when I'm able to bring in as much of that quality as I can into the room, I then know that if the other person ends up becoming ready to explore that side of themselves, um, the way that that happens, at least in my room, is that I show up embodying it as much as I can, do my best.
So it's like the idea of like mirror neurons that, if you show up with a smile, they smile. But it's a little deeper though. It's like
Yes,
you come with love, and that's the thing
peace
that
and awareness.
heals. Okay.
Absolutely. And it's a quality, that some people don't know what that is, but they know it feels good. And that's a great start.
And you mentioned it's like they want to be heard. So it's almost like that being heard makes you feel like you exist, because when no one hears you, then there's no interaction with the world. So it's
Well,
like,
yeah, and we're here to interact with each other. Otherwise, we would all just stay in this same big giant blob of consciousness, uh, only experiencing itself, which I'm sure feels great. But I do think that we're created separate so that we can hear each other and experience that connection as being separate.
and you mentioned, when you were 27 or so, you started looking at spirituality in a different way. Is there a moment that you can remember in which that happened? Where was your Bodhi tree moment?
Okay. Um, there was a moment that sort of started the domino effect. And it was, I wasn't 27 yet, I was 26. And I was in Joshua Tree with a bunch of my friends. And we were doing some psychedelic recreational drugs. And it was my first time doing that. And I was very scared. I, that's was very, like, very much outside of my comfort zone, my character. Like, I did not touch drugs. So I was really scared. And then there was just a moment where everyone else was hanging out somewhere, but I went out into this little field, and there was one other friend out there too, and it was dark, and I just looked up at the stars, and I was just truly like proclaimed, you know, that we exist in this. It's amazing that we're here at all. And we are not separate from what I'm looking at up there. And I said something out loud that was like, so this is what it is. And I wasn't talking about drugs. I wasn't talking about like doing acid or whatever. I was talking about this. Like, this is what this is that feeling of connection and being in that state of awe and wonder over what a miracle it is to exist at all. And it was another 6, 7 months before, I really reached a tipping point and made a lot of changes in my life. But that friend that I was standing with is my husband now. And we had been friends for 5 years before that moment. And that is what brought us together.
That's a beautiful story. And it's like descriptive, very well described as how the psychedelic is. It kind of allows you to see things as they really are. And to me, it feels like having the eyes of a child and seeing the magic again.
Absolutely. Yeah, it strips us away of all of that functioning that generalizes everything we see as like, okay, that's a wall, that's a star, that's a tree. And instead you're just like, look at that tree. Look at how beautiful this is. Can you even believe everything that's going on so that that tree can grow out of the ground and sprout leaves and sometimes even fruit and produce oxygen? Like, it's amazing. So, but we don't have time for all that in our everyday life. Sometimes we just need to know, like, okay, watch out for the tree. Um, so I agree that you know, psychedelics can be a tool in helping us re-experience things as new and in a way that helps us to experience that awe and wonder like we were when we were children.
It's I get a lot of clients who have, been down the psychedelic road and they want to rekindle that feeling. It's like they have this moment in psychedelics, but then they don't bring it back. And now they don't want to keep doing the psychedelics, but they want to bring it back. And I find with hypnotherapy, you can really kind of spark that because there's a part in them that
Absolutely.
remembers that.
It remembers. Mm-hmm.
You can
Mm-hmm.
just ask them to, ask the subconscious mind, bring that feeling up, and it kind of brings that back so that they can have that every day. And
Mm-hmm.
me and my personal journey, it's been about feeling it here. Like that's the most beautiful thing about the psychedelic to me. Like there's the images, there's the warping, there's all kinds of cool words that come to you, but that feeling in the heart is like, oh my God, I didn't know I could
It
feel.
is a a big opening, it's and when we, in school we learn about how a state of hypnosis is created. I immediately was just like, well, this is what happens when you do psychedelics. You're overloaded, and there's seeing everything in such a new way. You're overloaded, literally visually, but also what you're feeling. And I think a lot of people are, not everybody, again, and psychedelics really aren't for everybody. They really aren't. But for some people, it does give them access to the subconscious, and they're able to understand themselves and actually make pretty amazing changes with that new information when they come out. Um, so it's I do think that there's a little bit to that, the psychedelics as a use of helping to access the subconscious, to feel that connection, that really brings us back to feeling how what the magic that just we are innately just by existing. And when anyone can tap into that feeling, it's so beautiful. That's the sense of safety that is not being created without, outside of ourselves in a behavior or a habit or in a, comfort zone. That sense of safety of feeling like, oh, I'm part of something bigger. I'm not limited to my everyday me, what I think I am.
So you mentioned that that was like the beginning stage with you and your husband, and he does spiritual work. How does
Yes.
your work and his work, how do they meld? Like, what does he do, and do they meld?
We've always stayed very separate with our work. But we both really appreciate the other's work. I mean, he's been doing his work. He's been working, doing spiritual healing and whatnot for over 10 years now. And he's a published author in the field, and he stays busy. Um, and I love what he teaches and what he talks about, and that is probably what really pulled me into us becoming more than friends. Was out of everybody in our friend group, my ears perked up when Nabil was talking. I was just like, something about what this guy's saying, no one else is saying it, and it feels very true to me. But professionally, we've always, we've been separate, except for the fact that we cross promote on our newsletters, and I'm on his website and things like that. But we have been talking about doing a class together and how that might look, and I think it would be really fun. So I think it's in the future. Honestly, simultaneously to being in school and starting my practice, I was pregnant and had a baby. So there's just been so much going on as far as all of the ideas that have come in that have yet to, have their place right in front of my attention. But yeah, so hopefully someday not too far out, we'll be able to work together.
What have you learned from him? What has he learned from you? And what have you both learned, or just you, from your baby?
Okay. Well, having a baby is definitely, um, he has become my most greatest spiritual teacher, truly. Um, and everyone tells you this, I think, when you're, even when you're not a parent, or if you're expecting, that like children really do require you to drop into the present moment. And that's certainly true. Um, I also did not, again, conceptually I'd heard it but didn't understand. It's like, oh, you really feel a love like you've never felt before, and that is true. Like, I have a whole new dimension to my sense of what love is now that I have this kid, that I'm just like, I don't even know how I love you this much. um and he's so young. He's just, he's so pure in a sense. He doesn't have all of these um limiting beliefs or fears or any, he just, every day is just a day full of possibilities and discovery and adventure for him. And making it my job um, to protect that, and to allow him to do that, to discover and to explore, and to have that sense of awe and wonder. Um, that requires me to leave my shit at the door. And, even when you think you're good at that, and I've thought that I've developed that skill set over time, um, it's a whole nother game when you are creating the experience of a tiny little person and helping them build their world and their place in it. And so from a spiritual perspective, it's really been important to me that I'm able to drop my ego, drop my to-do list, drop my anxieties, and to drop into the world of Kai, where everything is new and exciting and fun and beautiful. Um, and to also hopefully, set an example to bring that love, that peace, that awareness, that spiritual side, bring it into the situation through my presence and showing up for him. Um, and so that it's been a big spiritual practice. And honestly, another little piece of that, maybe it's a sort of related, is there are really, 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 really hard moments with a newborn. Really hard moments. And for us, a lot of nights where there was a not sleep happening. And I got into this habit of, or rather using this as a practice to help through those nights, as I would be holding him, and he would only sleep if I held him, and I had to stay awake because would not be safe for me to fall asleep. And you're so exhausted at that point, you really could just cry and just go into despair. And I challenged myself to imagine a day when I am an old lady and my son is a grown man, And a lot of people that I love and who are alive right now maybe aren't alive right in that moment anymore. And how in that moment I would give anything to go back to being just exhausted and tired and holding my newborn son through the night. And I don't know how much that ties in with spirituality or not, but it was a really powerful way to keep me from getting caught up in the exhaustion and to instead really, really try to really appreciate the moment that was in front of me.
That's wonderful. That's like being grateful for even the difficulties in life.
Because on that day, if I'm out in the future and I'm an old lady and maybe my siblings aren't around anymore, or God forbid, even Nabil, if I outlive everyone I love, I'm sure I would go back in a heartbeat and relive the hardest nights as a new mom without thinking it, just to have those people and that time. And those gifts are obviously they're present for us in every moment, even when when I'm an old lady. Hopefully I get to be an old lady someday. Um, but I do think, at least for now, I'm able to do that little time jump as a trick to pull me back into the present, to really appreciate what is present and all the good that's happening.
What's your favorite memory so far as a family?
As a family, oh, okay. I have to think about that for a second because there's so many. Um, I mean, meeting my son was a huge one. Um, you have 9 months to just imagine what this little person will be like and imagine what you will be like when you become a parent. But then all of a sudden you're in this moment and this little being is on your body. And I mean, minutes before they were inside your body. And I mean, that was the craziest thing I've ever experienced in my life was was that. Again, we all conceptually know how babies enter the world, but when it happens to your body and right in front of you, and all of a sudden you have a person who has a name and a social security number, it's it really it's 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 amazing. I mean, truly, it almost brings me to tears just to remember that feeling of like this is this is really magic. So definitely meeting our son was probably the most important, most memorable memory as a family so far, and yesterday because he started crawling, and that was really exciting.
That's that's a beautiful way of putting it, magic. And it's interesting because these are things that some people avoid, like having kids, but it's those things that are sometimes avoided in modern society that are actually that allow you to feel magic again. Because as we get older, some things become less magical, but it's those things that have always been done that bring magic and make it worth living.
Absolutely. And look, there were a lot of nights after he was born that I was like, what the hell were we thinking? Like, we had a nice life where we could just do whatever we wanted and stay up and go out and take showers whenever we wanted. And there was like a period of grieving the old life. Um, but I mean, that's so long gone. And now it's just like, oh, I get to tap into the magic of this little person and all of the things that he experiences, being able to experience them again through his child eyes and just have it has to, I mean, for me anyway, like you can't not have a more optimistic, hopeful view on everything in the world when you have a child. It makes you go there.
You touched on this idea of grieving for the past and grieving the old life. And the world of hypnotherapy is kind of going through those changes right now, and everything's been moved over to Zoom and online. And what do you feel about that? Do you enjoy doing the live session? Is it different from the Zoom session?
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, when we were in school, all of our classes, practicums were on Zoom. Um, Ever since I started my practice, all of my sessions have been on Zoom except for one client, and I would go to their house. And I finally found and started working out of an office about a month ago. And so now a lot of my remote clients are coming in, and I really love it. I mean, from my experience, hypnosis is just as effective either way. I love to be in the room because I do think that, um, you know, bringing all those invisible qualities, and I think that, we show up with them as best we can over Zoom. I sense it from you. But when you're in the room with someone, there's another layer of feeling that energy. You can really feel it. And as a therapist, you can feel what they're coming in with. And it's just another layer that allows us to get to know each other more. Um, but that being said, Zoom has been great, and I'm so grateful that we have it. We are able to access clients all over now, and people who are not as mobile have the opportunity to experience hypnosis.
And what do you think about this advent of like Chat GPT and psychologists being worried about, they're going to take our jobs, that kind of thing? Do you think there's something that separates hypnotherapy from not only traditional psychotherapy? Do you think it's something that can be duplicated by like artificial intelligence, that kind of thing?
Um, what a question. Um, Not today, I would say. Um, and I do think about AI, and not to the depth that I know that some people who really are looking into this are. And I do think that concerns over AI and, um, you know, people's identities or jobs, or, you know, um, even artistic qualities, are feeling a little threatened by it. And I think that that's honestly very fair. I, from firsthand experience, not exactly AI, but I'm a pianist. I've worked my entire life on being a pianist, way more than 10,000 hours practicing my craft. And I'm very good at it. I think it's the thing I'm best at, to be completely frank. Um, People don't need pianists for the most part. If you're in the recording world, there's someone engineering and it's going to play it perfectly. So like, that's real, you know, that real musicians have been replaced by technology in a lot of cases. Not all, but it's very common now. It's very uncommon to have a real pianist come play on anything that's not in the classical music genre. Um, so I do think that there is that it's fair to be to feel a little insecure over AI. For our work in particular, I have not spent a lot of time being worried, because until AI can tap in to that, kind of higher force, that presence, um, I don't know that you can replace what people can do there. And the same thing with art. I know AI can create art, but it's creating art based on data that it's received. Art isn't being created through the AI from someplace beyond. And I think as people who experience the output, whether it's art, whether it's therapy, music, um, when you have the presence of the facilitator being someone who is bringing to their work something beyond them, we feel it, and we don't know what it is, but I do think we feel the difference. And people who may not feel the difference right away would definitely feel it in a world without, human creators. So all I got to say is we'll see. It's interesting to watch it unfold. This is where I have to kind of practice my own faith in that, there's no good or bad. There's just stories unfolding, and to just trust that, I'm going to find my place within it some way or another.
Where do you think the future of therapy and hypnotherapy, where are they going? And in your wildest ideas, when you started becoming this healer and started doing this work, where did your mind go? Like, where are the possibilities? What is the wildest, craziest thing you can think of for your practice?
The wildest, craziest. I don't have too many wild or crazy fantasies about my practice, but I when I first started school, I did feel this rush of excitement over the possibilities of what hypnosis could bring to every area. I was obsessed. I was like, things that we require a referral from a doctor or psychologist to work on. My mind went there right away. It's just like, oh man, people who are suffering really in their bodies and in their minds, hypnosis can help with. Um, I mean, just to be able to be someone who is contributing another resource into the world to help people, you know, self-actualize, to see themselves a little bit clearer, to maybe even see something beyond them a little bit, and really, I think we need it. We need that. We need more people to be able to feel that, to really be able to come into themselves and also feel that which is beyond themselves. Um, I think that's essential for us as a species to continue to survive, even,
What
learning
do you
that love
say?
for ourselves and others.
Thank you. What do you say to someone who's watching this right now and is feeling kind of disillusioned with the world of therapy? They've been to the psychologist, they've been to the therapist, and they're not, they haven't tried hypnotherapy. What do you say to them? Why can you help them?
Hmm. Well, um, I do think it's pretty common for people to get sort of a fatigue from therapy and from self-help and from trying to, tackle an issue that's been in their life for a really long time. If they came through my door, it would indicate to me that they're still ready to show up. Um, I think being able to guide them or let them know, like, going into your own subconscious is what's going to help you find the answers. We go to a therapist or we read a self-help, but I think a lot of times we're looking for something outside of ourselves or someone outside of ourselves to fix us or to give us the insight. And a lot of times we can get a lot of great insight and help from people outside of us, but nothing holds the answers that your subconscious holds. And the things that other people, other therapists or books or whatever, the things that resonate with you from those different outlets, they resonate with you because there's something that already exists inside you that is in alignment with that. And only you are able to, you know, um, excavate that and to get information from that and to heal from that. And in hypnosis, that's what we're doing. We're going into the subconscious. We're teaching you tools for you to do it yourself, through therapeutic journaling or self hypnosis or whatever it is. We, as hypnotherapists, are really handing the reins back to our clients and allowing them to see that um, it's within you. We just need to know where to look.
So, Katelyn Redwood, helping you unlock your own subconscious healing. Wonderful. Where can people reach out to you?
So you can find me on, I just started a TikTok. So that's very exciting. So I'm on TikTok at Katelyn the Hypnotherapist, and my therapy practice is under the name Gold Mind, GoldMind Hypnotherapy. So you can go to goldmindhypnotherapy.com, Goldmind Hypnotherapy on Instagram. You can email me, Katelyn at goldmindhypnotherapy, and I mean that pretty much covers it. If you can't get me on one of those places, then I've probably left the planet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story, your journey, and your perspective on healing. Very wonderful, touching stories.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to see you again.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.